Welcome to the FanDuel running back analysis for Week 15. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. With me is Justin Elick at Big Elite 42. Taking a look at cash and GPP running backs for this week. And, overall, I'm on basically all these same guys, and there's a sneaky Browns play that I'm intrigued with. So we'll get to that one, but you're looking to pay up once again. It's an easy choice.
Yeah, LaShawn McCoy's price has gone up quite a bit over the past couple of weeks, but, it makes sense because even, he's a guy who – game flow really doesn't matter and actually kind of helped him last week. He was struggling on the ground and then ended up with 81 receiving yards as the Bills kind of needed to move the ball. But, really the only negative with him is the fact that Mike Gillislee steals goal line work. And he is a good goal line back, and I get it, but it drives me nuts as a guy who has McCoy everywhere and plays him all the time. But, either way, it's not a bad strategy. And there's one other stack kind of like this where you can play both running backs that we'll get to later. But it's not a bad idea in some tournaments to play Gillislee and LaShawn McCoy against the Browns because, it's one of those situations where you just expect they're going to rack up a ton of yardage. And, why take the time and the risk of throwing the ball down the field a lot in this game when, you're going to be able to run at will.
Yeah, we've seen basically running backs just go to town against the Browns, game in and game out. Another guy here that no one steals his touchdowns at all because there's no one even close to him, and that's Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, and we said last week, didn't we call that? We said he hadn't had more than one touchdown in a game. He's going to have multiple. We certainly didn't predict. It was literally almost 300 total yards, which I just keep thinking about that and how ridiculous that number is. But, he just made it look so easy. And, despite the fact that I'm a Bengals fan, I'm not ignorant enough to believe that a healthy Le'Veon Bell is going to slow down at all. And I was looking because I remembered he had a huge game against the Bengals in Cincinnati, and it was actually his last full game, not a game he didn't get injured in Cincinnati. He had 235 total yards, 3 scores. Strangely enough, I thought that was like the best game that he was ever going to have. And then, 1 week removed from last week's game. Now, obviously, he's not likely to have 200-plus yards and 3 scores or anything like that. But, he's just going to have that ridiculous floor. And he had 42 touches last week. He's got 35 or more in 3 of his last 4 games. His workload is really second to none right now. Even David Johnson isn't seeing that many touches. Zeke Elliott's not seeing that many. It's the most obvious cash game play of the week, I think, really at any position.
Yeah, he's got a floor basically of 17, 18 points just solely off of yardage and receptions alone. So, and also, both these guys are, at a slight discount from David Johnson, who's, priced up quite a bit this week.
Yeah, he breached 10K on DraftKings this week.
Yeah, so,
that's a decision you actually got to make with him for once.
Yeah, and, good spot. Do you like Johnson is still in play for you?
Oh, yeah. I still love Johnson every week. Last week, I think he's a great GPP play this week because, last week, I guess it was disappointing relatively to what he normally does, but he still had 120 some yards or 100, it might have been 130 yards. Yeah, he got the 2-point conversion catch. So, for him, it's a disappointment because he didn't score, but still just a tremendous floor. It's just, I'd rather save a couple bucks and get Le'Veon Bell, who I think is, dollar for dollar, probably a little bit better of a play this week.
Yeah, looking at that Miami Cardinals game, given the rain and just the torrential downpour it was for basically the entire game, it made it tough for basically all those guys to do really much work.
You saw Carson Palmer; he was horrible. So, yeah. Obviously, it wasn't ideal conditions, or maybe he's.
And we're 5 minutes into our pods today, and we have a Carson Palmer slam.
Actually, we'll get to him here in a couple minutes, but unfortunately, I'm actually going to be playing him this week.
Yeah, I am too.
Not in cash games.
No, definitely not. GPP backs, Devonta Freeman. Obviously, both these Atlanta backs. I think, obviously you were hinting at possibly playing 2 here. Best matchup on the board.
Yeah, this is another one of those spots where, you could play Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman. Freeman is a guy who I think is going to have probably a little bit higher ownership than I would like, considering, it is obviously an incredible matchup, but Freeman's not a guy that gets a ton of touches. He's had over 20 carries only once this season. Last week only had 6 carries, 6 yards. That game kind of game flow, strangely enough, as good as the offense was, it kind of took him out of play as a running back because we saw Teron Ward had 10 carries. Tevin Coleman got some carries. So, that's the risk you take with Freeman, is that Atlanta just has so many options, so many weapons. Even without Jones or Sanu last week, he's still they didn't really need him to do anything because the offense was firing on all cylinders. So that's the risk you take. That's why I'm not really going to be playing him in cash games. But, the upside's massive. If San Francisco can score some points this week and keep this one close, you could see him catching passes out of the backfield as well. Obviously, he's got 2 touchdown upside. He had back-to-back 2-score games against Arizona and KC. And, that's 2 of the tougher matchups you're going to see. So the upside's certainly there. The floor really, I don't think it is, despite that tough matchup or the great matchup. So, I think that he's a fairly safe play, I guess, relatively. But, if you're looking for a cash game play, I think that there's quite a few better options.
Yeah, I do too. It's not the most consistent, as we've really seen. Even when Coleman went down, he had those 2 20-point games, but also there were some duds in there too. So that's kind of one of the risks that you usually draw with him. Isaiah Crowell, 5,500. And this one I looked at the beginning of the week and was like, man, he's kind of sneaky. Bill's defense has just been – obviously last week was bad, but they've been bad for a few weeks now.
Yeah, and I like to pick my spots with Crow because I do think he is a good runner, and there's not really many options on this team. And last time I played him was that Bengals game, and he didn't end up with 100 yards, but he did end up scoring a touchdown in that game. And, at $1,000 above the minimum, he's not a guy that you need to go out to get you 100 yards and a touchdown. He's going to be probably sub 5% owned at best. And, he's got 300-yard games this year. He's got 5 touchdowns, and, he's a guy who actually has, some pretty good numbers, despite the fact that his team is awful. He's 8th in the NFL, 4.6 yards per carry. And we're looking at the Bills. You mentioned their defense, 29th in the NFL against the run now, 125 yards a game, 18 rushing touchdowns. So obviously numbers slightly inflated because of Le'Veon Bell last week. But, like you said, this is a defense that's been going downhill for quite some time. And Crowell probably never going to see 20 carries in a game. He really doesn't ever see that type of volume. But with 15 carries roughly against this team, he could put up a pretty good number.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like the team total here, is a little bit off.
Yeah, as weird as it is to say that, as bad as this team is, although the Rams had a team total of 12 points last night?
Yeah, I think it even dropped down to 11.
I'm sure they didn't get anywhere near that amount of points.
That's true. I would just expect maybe 18, 19 would be a fair, somewhere in between that 2 to 3 touchdown range.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they go over this. I would never put confidence in many Browns players at all. Crowell's really the only one I ever play. Prior there for a couple weeks, but that's it.
Yeah, I'm not going to go out and just go, onto the gambling websites and hammer the over here, but
no. But
yeah, if I get drunk enough, I might. But
yeah, if there's an over under on Crowell at 55 rushing yards, I'd take the over on that.
Yeah, sure. I would too. So
I don't know what the number is, or even if they even make player props for the Browns. I don't know why they would.
I would not. I think those fall under the college stats usually.
Yeah, it's just click the under, parlay all prop bets under.
It's just, did the Browns win or lose? That's all it is. 0-16.
Yeah, no good odds on that. Although you probably can bet on them to win one game, maybe. The Bills' defense is so bad right now that
this would be the week that they win.
I guess everyone said it was going to be last week. I'm offended by that, but.
Jeez.
No, they're not going to win a game. They're not going to win a game. No. We're not that generous. I'm not.
No. Value running backs here: Kenneth Farrow, obviously Melvin Gordon. I believe isn't officially ruled out, but highly doubtful that he plays this week and possibly for the rest of the year. So obviously a lot of usage to kind of go up in the air here.
Yeah, and we saw Farrow last week. He took over for Gordon, and he wasn't particularly effective. But you have to be kind of encouraged by the volume that he saw. Gordon went down, I think it was the first quarter, and Farrow had 16 carries, 55 yards, 6 targets, only got 23 yards off him, but caught all 6 of the balls. So that's an encouraging sign too. And that's a tough matchup against Carolina. Their run defense is really their one strength on that side. And, that's not the case with Oakland. Oakland's sitting there 26 in the NFL against the run. Farrow had 55 snaps last week, which was 6th highest among all running backs. So how San Diego relies on the running backs. Early this season it was supposed to be Woodhead and Gordon, with Gordon being the runner. and then Woodhead being kind of the change of pace receiving back. But with all the injuries, I mean, whoever's in there is kind of by default both. The third down back, you catch the catching passes, and everyone's talking about Ronnie Hillman. Maybe he comes in, but I mean, he hasn't played a single snap in almost a month. I mean, I don't see him coming in and taking a big workload because everyone's saying he's the experienced back, et cetera, et cetera. But if he was really that experienced, why has he not even seen the field in a couple weeks?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, he's already been cut a few times.
Yeah.
And, it just doesn't look like he's just – I would imagine he's just going to be there in case anything happens to Farrell. I mean,
yeah.
That's
I think – yeah, I agree. I mean, Farrell's not a guy I probably play in cash games. I'll probably just pay up for running backs in cash games because there's plenty of cheap receivers I'm fine with. Yeah. But, I mean, if you had to go with a cheap running back in cash games, I think Farrell would be the guy for me.
Yeah, in terms of volume and the matchup's pretty solid as well. I agree. Next one here, I mean, this one is – I'm curious to see because New England's always tough to get a read on. Anytime that we get a blunt game, it's usually – goes somewhere else, and it's not. And then every time we don't get one, we do.
Yeah, I know. It seems like it's the games where they get up by 3-4 touchdowns and things like that, where Blunt does. But, you look at his touches recently, and 5 of the last 6 games, he's had at least 18 carries. And, I mean, he's been efficient. I mean, he's leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns. He's top 5 in yardage, and nobody still ever talks about him because he's a New England running back. And it seems like for the first time in I mean, I couldn't even tell you how many years. There's actually some clarity in that backfield, despite the fact that Deion Lewis is back now. I mean, there's a lot of options there, but I mean, there's that one consistent, and we know how good Denver is against the pass, number 1 in the league, but they're bottom 5 run defense right now, according to, I mean, depending on which numbers you look at. They just haven't been good, and part of that is the fact that people realize, it's tough to pass against them. So Tom Brady, obviously, we thought he had a tough matchup last week against the Ravens, and he just absolutely dominated them. So I certainly wouldn't put it past Brady to have a solid game here, but I mean, Blunt's got 3 multi-touchdown games this year. He's got a floor of 10 to 12 points, and I mean, as an absolute fact that if this ball gets down inside the red zone, I mean, LeGarrette Blount's the one getting the ball. With Melvin Gordon hurt now, he's the number 1 running back inside the 20, inside the 10. I mean, he's got 16 carries inside the 10 or inside the 5. He's got 48 carries inside the 20. I mean, this ball gets in the red zone, especially with no Gronkowski. You don't really have a big weapon aside from Blount that you can really rely on. I mean, Edelman's not much of a touchdown scorer. Malcolm Mitchell, I guess, but can you really rely on him every week? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, this one I like. I mean, 6,300. And the thing is, it seems like a lot of the Patriots players are priced down this week based on the matchup. And you look, I mean, really 70 to 80 rushing yards and a touchdown just seems like a reasonable outcome in projection. Yeah. So 14 to 15 points from a guy who's 6,300. I don't mind that at all.
No, and I mean, if Brady does struggle in the passing game, I mean, Denver, even when they know the run's coming, they haven't been very effective. So I think it's a really good spot for him, actually. And I think he's going to be much lower owned than he probably should be.
Yeah, I would imagine so, just given the fact there's a lot of top price backs people are going to be going after. So
yeah. Absolutely.
That's going to wrap things up with the FanDuel running back analysis for Week 15. If you want to check out Justin's article, you can head on over to dailyfantasycafe.com and check that out. Be sure to check out the rest of our Week 15 content.